Hello everyone, today we are going to learn Chapter 4, The Colonial Era in India, Part 1 from your Social Science textbook. In this video, I'll be covering each and every line from the chapter so you don't miss anything important. Make sure to keep your notebook and pen ready and take notes while watching. This will help you remember the concepts better. You can pause or rewind any time to write things down. So, let's begin. First, we have a quote by William Digby. William Digby was a British writer, journalist and humanitarian. He supported the rights of Indians and spoke out against British injustice in India. He wrote books and articles showing how the British were unfairly treating Indians and taking their resources. Even though he was British, he believed that India deserved fair treatment and justice. Nearly 2 centuries ago, the early Britons in Bengal and the sister presidencies regarded the land and the people as fair game for plunder. Under the later Britons as administrators, the plunder is proceeding far more outrageously today than at any preceding period. Modern England has been made great by Indian wealth always taken by the might and skill of the stronger. Sister presidencies. During British rule in India, the British divided the country into large administrative regions called presidencies. Each presidency had its own governor and government system. The 3 main and most powerful of these were called the sister presidencies. They were Bengal Presidency, Madras Presidency and Bombay Presidency. And Britons refers to the people of Britain. To plunder means to steal large quantities of goods or money, especially from a place or person using force, often during a war or conflict. So here William Digby is talking about how the British treated India during their rule. In the beginning, when the British first came to India, especially Bengal, they mostly wanted to loot and take away India's wealth. Later, even though they called themselves administrators or rulers, they continued to take India's money and resources, but in a more organized and clever way. He says that modern England became rich because of all the wealth taken from India. And this wealth was taken not by kindness but by the power and cleverness of the stronger country, Britain. Next, we have a painting. Figure 4.1, a painting entitled The East Offering Its Riches to Britannia by a Greek painter. Kidzpedia in Roma, 1778. The painting is discussed later in the chapter. The East here refers to the eastern countries, especially India and other Asian regions. Offering its riches means giving its wealth, like gold, spices, jewels and other valuable things. And Britannia is a symbol of Britain, like how Bharat Mata represents India. Britannia is a powerful woman representing the British Empire. This painting was painted in 1778 during the time when Britain was becoming very powerful in India. The painting shows how the British viewed themselves as superior and how they believed it was right for them to take riches from the East. Britannia is seen sitting proudly while the East is shown as humbly offering wealth. This painting shows how people in Britain believed that they are doing the right thing by ruling over the East like India, even though they were actually taking away its wealth. We will learn more about this painting in the later part of the chapter. So the big questions are, what is colonialism? What drew European powers to India? What was India's economic and geopolitical standing before and during the colonial period? How did the British colonial domination of India impact the country? We will learn answers for these questions in this chapter. Figure 4.2. We have a timeline from 1440 to 1890. This timeline shows important events like when foreign powers came to India and over time how they began to control Indian land and resources. First, we have in 1498, Vasco da Gama arrived at Calicut, that is Kozhikode in today's Kerala. Vasco da Gama was a Portuguese explorer who found a sea route from Europe to India. He landed at Calicut, also called as Kozhikode now, on the southwest coast of India, that is in Kerala. This was the first direct sea link between Europe and India. It opened the door for European countries like Portugal, the Dutch, the French and later the British to come to India for trade. This also marked the beginning of European colonization in India. 1560, establishment of the Inquisition at Goa. So in 1560, the Portuguese rulers started the Inquisition at Goa, which was then a colony of Portugal in India. So Inquisition means here in this case, it was a special code set up by the Portuguese Catholic Church to check if people were following the Christian religion properly and punish those who were not, or those who followed other religions but had converted to Christianity were suspected of going back to their old faith. It was very strict and harsh. People were often punished without a fair trial. Many were forced to change their religion or hide their beliefs. From 1612 to 1690, the English East India Company establishes trading posts at Surat, Madras, Bombay and Calcutta. East India Company was a British trading company started in 1600 to do business with India and Asia. At first, it came for spices, silk, cotton and other goods. But later, the company became very powerful and even started ruling parts of India. To do business easily, the company set up trading posts, also called as factories or settlements, in different parts of India. They established their first trading post in Surat, in present-day Gujarat. Second in Madras, now Chennai on the east coast. Then Bombay, now Mumbai on the west coast. Calcutta, now Kolkata in the east. These places became centers for trade and later helped the British gain control over India. 1674, the French East India Company sets up a trading post at Pondicherry. So in 1674, the French East India Company, a trading company from France, came to India to do business just like the British East India Company. They set up a trading post, a place to buy and sell goods in Pondicherry, now called Puducherry on the east coast of India. This became the main center of French trade and power in India. 1741, defeat of the Dutch at the Battle of Colachel. So in 1741, a battle was fought between the Dutch from the Dutch East India Company and the army of the Kingdom of Travancore in Colachel, which is in present-day Tamil Nadu. The Travancore king Marthanda Varma defeated the Dutch in this battle. It was one of the first times an Indian king defeated a European power in battle. It weakened Dutch power in India. The Dutch never fully recovered after this loss. This was a big victory for an Indian ruler over a European power. 1746 to 1763, the Carnatic Wars between the British and the French. So, between 1746 and 1763, the British East India Company and the French East India Company fought a series of battles in South India. These were called the Carnatic Wars because they took place in the Carnatic region, mainly around the Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. They were fighting to gain control over trade and become more powerful in India. 1757, British victory in the Battle of Plassey. In 1757, the British defeated the Nawab of Bengal at the Battle of Plassey. This was the start of British rule in India. From 1770 to 1772, first Great Famine in Bengal. So, between 1770 and 1772, a terrible famine, that is, severe shortage of food, happened in Bengal. Many people died because there was no food, and the British still took taxes from farmers. 1818, Third Anglo-Maratha War ends Maratha power. So, in 1818, the Third Anglo-Maratha War was fought between the British East India Company and the Maratha rulers, who were one of the last big Indian powers trying to stop British control. The British won this year and the Marathas were defeated completely. Their empire came to an end. This made the British the main rulers of India. 1829 to 1833, the Khasi uprising in present-day Meghalaya. So, between 1829 and 1833, the Khasi tribe in Khasi Hills, which is now in Meghalaya, fought against the British rule. This movement was led by a Khasi chief named Tirot Singh. The Khasi warriors fought bravely, but the British had better weapons and more soldiers. Eventually, the British defeated the uprising. The Khasi tribe fought the British to protect their land and freedom. Even though they lost, they showed great courage and resistance. 1835, Macaulay's Minute on Indian Education. In 1835, a British official named Thomas Babington Macaulay wrote a note called a Minute about how education should be given in India. He wanted English to be the main language of education in India. He believed British knowledge was better than Indian knowledge. He thought Indian books in Sanskrit and Persian were not useful. And Indians should be educated in English and learn Western subjects. This changed Indian education and helped spread the English language. 1848 to 49, fall of the Sikh Empire. The East India Company annexes Punjab. Between 1848 and 49, the British East India Company fought the Second Anglo-Sikh War against the Sikh Empire in Punjab. The Sikh Empire, which had been strong under Maharaja Ranjit Singh, had weakened after his death. The British took advantage of this and went to war with the Sikh rulers. The British won the war. In 1849, the British annexed Punjab, meaning they took full control of it. The Sikh Empire came to an end. 1857, the Great Indian Rebellion. In 1857, a major uprising broke out against the British East India Company. It started with Indian soldiers, that is sepoys in the British Army, and soon spread to farmers, kings and common people in many parts of North and Central India. 1858, the British Crown ends the rule of the East India Company, start of the British Raj. So, the 1857 Indian Rebellion was the first big step towards India's freedom. The British crushed the rebellion using more powerful weapons, but it showed that Indians were ready to fight for freedom. After the revolt, the British government took direct control of India from the East India Company in 1858. This began the period called the British Raj, when India was ruled directly by the British government. India was now ruled in the name of Queen Victoria. A viceroy, that is representative of the Queen, was sent to govern India. In the previous chapter, we saw the Marathas considerably weaken the Mughal Empire before they themselves succumbed to the British forces early in the 19th century. And yet, military campaigns were only one factor in India becoming the jewel in the crown of the British Empire. Indeed, the empire's largest colony. So, in the previous chapter, we saw that the Marathas fought against the Mughal Empire and made it weak. But later, the British defeated the Marathas and took control of much of India by the early 1800s. Winning wars and military battles was just one part of how the British took over India. India was also very valuable because of its resources, trade and wealth. It became the biggest and most important colony in the British Empire. Because of this, India was called the jewel in the crown, meaning it was the most precious and valuable part of the British Empire. The age of colonialism. Before we get there, we must step back a little in time and consider the phenomenon of colonialism. Its usual definition is the practice where one country takes control of another region, establishing settlements there and imposing its political, economic and cultural systems. This is not a recent occurrence. Colonialism can be traced to the time of the great empires in the first millennium BCE, in the first millennium CE. The spread of Christianity and Islam also involved the colonization of the territories converted to the new faiths. So, what does colonialism mean? Colonialism is when one country takes control over another place. The country that takes control sets up settlements like towns or cities in the new place. They also impose their own political rules, economy and culture on the people living there. And colonialism is very old. It goes back to the time of great empires long ago, even before 1000 BCE, more than 3000 years ago. Later, during the first millennium CE, from year 1 to 1000 CE, the spread of Christianity and Islam also involved taking over new lands and cultures. But the age of colonialism usually refers to Europe's expansion from the 15th century onward, which within a few centuries extended to large parts of the world. As you will discover in higher grades, European powers, in particular Spain, Portugal, Britain, France and Netherlands, established colonies across Africa, Asia, the Americas, Australia and many Pacific Islands. After conquering large parts of those regions of the world, often the conquests were achieved through military campaigns that involved the massacre or enslavement of native populations. Enslavement, turning someone into a slave. So what does it mean? Enslavement is when a person is forced to become a slave. This means they lose their freedom and are made to work or obey someone else without choice. So enslavement was part of history in many places, including during times of colonialism. People were taken from their homes and made slaves to work for others. The age of colonialism started around the 15th century, that is 1400s, and lasted for a few hundred years. During this time, European countries expanded and took control of many parts of the world. The main European powers were Spain, Portugal, Britain, France, and the Netherlands. They created colonies in places like Africa, Asia, the Americas, Australia, and Pacific Islands. Many times they used military campaigns, that is wars and battles, to conquer these lands. These conquests sometimes involved a massacre, killing in large numbers of native people. They also enslaved many of the native populations, forcing them to work under harsh conditions. What impelled those nations to undertake such campaigns? Political competition between European powers created a race for territorial expansion and global influence. Territorial expansion had obvious economic advantages, access to new natural resources, new markets, and new trade routes, and often plunder, as we will see. Converting indigenous populations to Christianity was another powerful motivation. A lesser one, but significant nonetheless, was scientific inquiry, the desire to explore unknown lands so as to accumulate knowledge of the planet's geography and natural history. So what impelled, that is, motivated these European countries to go on these big journeys to conquer other lands? European countries wanted to take over other lands for many reasons, like political competition. European countries like Britain, France, Spain, Portugal are competing with each other. Each one wanted to be more powerful and have more colonies than the others. Economic benefits. They could get natural resources like spices, cotton, gold, and tea from new lands. They could sell their goods to these new markets. They could also use new trade routes to earn more profit. Sometimes they also looted or plundered the wealth of the colonies. Spread of Christianity. Many Europeans wanted to convert local people in these new lands to Christianity. They believed it was their duty to spread their religion. And scientific exploration. Some people were curious and wanted to explore unknown places. They wanted to learn more about the Earth's geography, animals, plants, and people. While colonizers often claimed they had the civilizing mission of bringing progress to the colonized peoples, who were often demonized as savage, primitive, or barbaric. The reality was very different. Loss of independence, exploitation of resources by the colonizers, the destruction of traditional ways of life, and the imposition of foreign cultural values. It is true that the colonial age brought the world together for a rapid growth of economies and technologies, but the benefits were mostly for the colonizers. Many historical studies have documented the immense hardships that the colonized people had to endure. Demonize, to falsely portray an individual or a group of people in a very negative light. Demonizing means showing a person or group in a negative way to make others dislike or rethink. So what did colonizers say? Colonizers said they had a civilizing mission. They claimed they were bringing progress and development to the people they took over. They often called the local people savage, primitive, or barbaric, meaning uncivilized or backward. What was the real situation? The colonized people lost their independence and freedom. The colonizers exploited natural resources like minerals, forests, and crops for their own benefit. Traditional ways of life, culture, and customs were often destroyed or changed forcibly. Foreign cultures, languages, and values were imposed on the local people. So was there any benefit? The colonial age did help in bringing the world closer through trade and new technologies. However, most benefits went to the colonizers, not the colonized people. Many people had to face great hardships like poverty, loss of culture, and oppression. In simple words, colonizers said they were helping the local people, but really they took away freedom, resources, and culture and made life hard for many. Let's explore. What do you think the cartoon figure 4.3 is trying to express? Keep in mind that the telegraph, which permitted instant communications for the first time, was then a recent invention. Analyze different elements of the drawing. Figure 4.3, a cartoon depicting a British business magnate straddling Africa when he pulls a telegraph wire. Edward Linley sample in Punch magazine, London, 1880. This cartoon shows a British businessman standing with one foot in North Africa and the other in South Africa, as if he is traveling the entire continent. A business magnate is someone who owns big companies, has a lot of money, has a lot of the influence or power in the world of business. He's holding a telegraph wire in his hands. This cartoon was drawn by Edward Linde Samper and published in Punch magazine in London 1892. I will give you a sample answer for this question. You can write your own answer based on this example. So, what do you think the cartoon is trying to express? The cartoon expresses the idea of European imperialism in Africa. It shows a giant businessman standing across the continent, holding a telegraph wire that stretches from the north to the south. This represents the desire to connect and control many colonies in Africa using technology like the telegraph. Analyze different elements of the drawing. In the cartoon, the giant man stands with one foot in northern Africa and the other in southern Africa, showing control over the entire continent. He is holding a telegraph wire which symbolizes plans to connect colonies for better communication and control. On his head, he wears a formal British hat, symbolizing his identity as a British leader. He also carries a rifle on his shoulder, which shows that imperialism involved the use of military force to control people and land. All these elements together show the aggressive and ambitious nature of British imperialism in Africa. In many of the colonized regions, resistance built up against the colonizers. The phenomenon of colonialism declined in the mid-20th century, especially after World War II. Many factors contributed to rapid worldwide decolonization, with most colonized countries attaining independence. Here, however, we will focus on the special case of India. So, in many parts of the world that were colonized, people started to resist the control of the colonizers. After World War II, colonialism began to decline quickly. Many countries gained independence during this time because several important changes happened worldwide. In this section, we will focus on the special case of India and explore how it gained independence from British rule. Europeans in India. India traded with the Greeks and the Romans over 2 millennia ago. Indian goods, spices, cotton, ivory, gems, sandalwood, teakwood, wood, steel, among other commodities, were highly sought after in the Mediterranean world. Until the 16th century CE, when European powers began sailing to the Indian subcontinent, India was a vibrant economic and cultural powerhouse. So, India traded with the Greeks and Romans for more than 2000 years ago. Indian products like spices, cotton, ivory, gems, sandalwood, teakwood, and a special kind of steel called woods were very popular in the Mediterranean region. Woods was a type of strong and sharp steel made in ancient India, known for its quality and used to make swords. So, until the 16th century CE, before European countries arrived by sea, India was a rich and important center for both trade and culture. Historical estimates by economist Angus Madison in particular suggest that India contributed at least 1/4 of the world GDP during this whole period, making it one of the two largest economies globally alongside China, whose contribution was of the same order. GDP, abbreviation of Gross Domestic Product, a measure of the value of goods and services a country or the world in this case produces in 1 year. So, GDP stands for Gross Domestic Product. It is a way to measure the total value of all goods and services produced by a country or the whole world in 1 year. It shows how rich or poor a country's economy is. If a country makes a lot of things and produces many services, its GDP will be high. If it produces less, its GDP will be low. So, according to historians and economists like Angus Madison, India contributed at least 1/4, that is 25% of the world's total economic output, that is GDP during that time. This means India was one of the two biggest economies in the world, along with China. Both countries together made up a huge part of the world's wealth. It is remarkable that from the 16th century onward, many European travelers to India described her as flourishing and noted her manufacturing capabilities, diverse agricultural output, and extensive internal as well as external trading networks. However, This economic prosperity also made India an attractive target for European colonial ambitions. So, from the 16th century onward, many European travelers describe India as a flourishing country. Flourishing means growing, developing, and doing very well. When we say a country or place is flourishing, it means it is healthy, successful, and full of activity. They noticed India's strong manufacturing, that is, making many goods like textiles and metal products, diverse agriculture, producing many different kinds of crops, extensive trade networks, that is, trading within India and with other countries. Because India was so prosperous and rich, it became a very attractive target for European countries who wanted to control its wealth and trade. Let us survey Europe's first colonial powers in India. So let's take a look at the first European countries that started colonizing India. The Portuguese, commerce and atrocities. The Portuguese explorer and navigator Vasco da Gama's arrival at Calicut near Calicut in Kerala in May 1498 paved the way for the beginning of European colonization in India. Atrocities are very cruel, violent or terrible acts often done to hurt or punish people unfairly. Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese explorer, reached Calicut near Calicut in Kerala in May 1498. His arrival was very important because it opened the way for European countries to come to India and start colonizing. So, Vasco da Gama was the first European to reach India by sea, starting European colonization. Though he was well received, his aggressive ways failed to establish friendly relations with the local rulers. During a second voyage, 4 years later, he seized, tortured and killed Indian merchants and bombarded Calicut from the sea. The Portuguese captured strategic ports including Goa in 1510, which became the capital of their colony in India, as well as several trading posts along the Malabar and Coromandel coast. So, Vasco da Gama was welcomed when he first arrived in India in 1498, but his rude and aggressive behavior made the local rulers unhappy. On a second visit in 1502, he attacked Indian merchants. He seized, tortured and killed them. He also bombarded, that is, fired cannons at Calicut from the sea. They captured important ports, especially Goa in 1510, which became the capital of Portuguese India. They also captured other trading posts on the Malabar coast in Kerala and Coromandel coast in Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. The Portuguese implemented a system known as cartas, pass, requiring all ships in the Arabian Sea to purchase Portuguese permits for navigation. Ships without these permits were seized. This naval dominance allowed them to monopolize the spice trade between India and Europe for nearly a century. What was cartas? The cartas was a pass or permit introduced by the Portuguese. They forced all ships sailing in the Arabian Sea to buy this pass. Monopolize means to have or take complete control of something so that others are prevented from sharing it. So, when a ship didn't have the cartas, the Portuguese would stop the ship and sometimes seize it, that is, take it by force. This system gave the Portuguese control over sea trade in the region. It helped them dominate the spice trade between India and Europe for almost 100 years. Alongside commercial exploitation, the Portuguese presence in Western India was characterized by religious persecution. In Goa, they established the Inquisition in 1560, which severely persecuted Hindus, Muslims, Jews and Christian converts suspected of practicing their original faith. Such persecution was accompanied by forced conversions and the destruction of many Hindu temples, among other forms of abuse of the native population. The Goa Inquisition was only abolished in 1812. Inquisition, a tribunal set up by the Roman Catholic Church to judge heretics, that is, Christians suspected of holding opinions contrary to the church doctrine. Over some 600 years, across Europe, many thousands of supposed heretics were tortured and executed. The Inquisition was a special court set up by the Roman Catholic Church. It was used to judge and punish Christians who were suspected of not following the church's rule or beliefs. These people were called heretics. A heretic is someone who belongs to a religion but does not agree with some of its main teachings. The Inquisition lasted for about 600 years and took place in many parts of Europe. Many of these people were tortured and even killed. So, along with trading, the Portuguese also forced their religion on people in Western India. In Goa, they started the Goa Inquisition in 1560, which punished people who were not following the Christian religion. Hindus, Muslims, Jews, and even new Christian converts were treated badly if they were suspected of secretly practicing their old religion. Many Hindu temples were destroyed, and people were often forced to convert to Christianity. The Inquisition was very harsh and only ended in 1812. Figure 4.4, a plaque in Calicut marking Vasco da Gama's arrival in 1498. A plaque is a flat metal or stone sign that memorializes a person or event. This plaque is placed in Calicut, that is Calicut, in Kerala. It marks the spot where Vasco da Gama arrived in 1498. Remember, this was the first time a European explorer reached India by sea. Vasco da Gama's arrival was a turning point in Indian history. It led to the start of the European colonial rule in India, beginning with the Portuguese. A few centuries ago, the port town of Ullal in present-day southern Karnataka was an important trading point controlled by Rani Abbaka I. In the latter half of the 16th century, the Portuguese repeatedly attempted to take it over, but Rani Abbaka I formed strategic alliances with neighboring kingdoms and thwarted their attempts. She was eventually captured and died fighting in prison. Her successor, Rani Abbaka II, is reported to have created fireballs out of coconut shells and set several ships of the Portuguese Navy on fire. Their inspirational stories are remembered even today through the Yakshagana, a traditional form of dance drama. Ullal is a port town in present-day southern Karnataka. A few centuries ago, it was an important trading center. And Rani Abbaka I was the queen of Ullal in the 16th century. The Portuguese wanted to take over Ullal many times, but Rani Abbaka I fought back bravely by making alliances, that is, friendships with nearby kingdoms, and thwarted their attempts. Thwarted means successfully opposed or prevented. Sadly, she was later captured and died fighting in prison. After Rani Abbaka I, Rani Abbaka II became queen and continued the fight against the Portuguese. She is said to have made fireballs using coconut shells and used them to burn Portuguese ships. Their brave stories are told through Yakshagana, a traditional dance drama form from Karnataka. The Dutch, commerce and competition. The Dutch arrived in India in the early 17th century and, unlike the Portuguese, focused primarily on commercial dominance, particularly in the spice trade. They established a Dutch East India Company with trading posts in various parts of India, including on the west coast, Surat, Bharuch, Cochin, that is Kochi, and on the east coast, Nagapattinam and Masulipattinam, present-day Machilipattinam. Their most significant presence was in their Malabar region of Kerala, where they displaced the Portuguese from several trading centers. Commerce means big trade, buying and selling things, especially between different places or countries. So, the Dutch came to India in the early 1600s, that is 17th century. Unlike the Portuguese, who wanted to control land and spread religion, the Dutch mainly wanted to do business, especially in spices like pepper, cloves and nutmeg. They started a company called the Dutch East India Company. This company set up trading posts, that is places to buy and sell goods in many parts of India. On the west coast, in Surat, Bharuch, Cochin or Kochi, and on the east coast, Nagapattinam and Masulipattinam, now called Machilipattinam. In the Malabar region of Kerala, that is on the west coast, the Dutch became very strong. They even pushed out the Portuguese from some important trading centers. The Dutch presence in India was ultimately limited. It declined significantly after they defeated the Battle of Colachel in 1741, where the forces of Travancore under the King Marthanda Varma decisively defeated the Dutch both on land and at sea. The Travancore kingdom was in the southern part of present-day Kerala. This battle was a rare instance of an Asian power successfully repelling a European colonial force. Although the Dutch traded in many parts of India, their power started to decline after the Battle of Colachel in 1741 in present-day Kerala. The Dutch fought against the Kingdom of Travancore. King Marthanda Varma, the ruler of Travancore, led his army and defeated the Dutch on both land and sea. It was a rare example where an Indian or Asian kingdom defeated a powerful European country. After this, the Dutch influence in India became very weak. Figure 4.5, a depiction of the surrender of Dutch forces to King Marthanda Varma of Travancore after the Battle of Colachel, 1741 CE, Padmanabhapuram Palace. So, this artwork shows the moment when the Dutch forces surrendered to King Marthanda Varma of Travancore after the Battle of Colachel in 1741 CE. The event is shown in the Padmanabhapuram Palace, which was once the royal palace of Travancore in present-day Tamil Nadu near Kerala. The French colonial ambitions. The French entered India later, establishing their first trading post at Surat in 1668 and subsequently at Pondicherry, present-day Puducherry in 1674, where they established their East India Company, Compagnie des Indes Orientales, and developed ambitious plans to establish a French Empire in India. So the French arrived a bit later than the Portuguese and Dutch. They set up their first trading post at Surat in 1668. In 1674, the French established a trading post at Pondicherry, which is called Puducherry today. They created their own East India Company called Compagnie des Indes Orientales. The French wanted to build a French Empire in India and compete with other European powers like the British and Portuguese. Dupleix, who served as Governor-General of French India from 1742 to 1754, pioneered several colonial strategies that would later be adopted by the British. In particular, he trained Indian soldiers in European military techniques, creating disciplined infantry soldiers known as sepoys. Dupleix also developed the strategy of indirect rule through puppet Indian rulers who were installed through interventions in local succession disputes. So, Dupleix was the Governor-General of French India from 1742 to 1754. He was an important leader who planned how the French could rule India better. He trained Indian soldiers in European ways of fighting. These soldiers were called sepoys. They were disciplined and followed European military methods. He used a smart way to rule called indirect rule. Instead of ruling directly, the French made Indian kings or rulers who were loyal to them. They helped these rulers get power by interfering in local family disputes about who should become king. Dupleix' ideas were later copied by the British when they took control of India. His military and political strategies helped European powers control Indian territories. The French colonial ambitions in India were ultimately checked during the Carnatic Wars, 1746 to 1763, a series of conflicts between Britain and France. Despite initial successes under Dupleix, who captured Madras, present-day Chennai in 1746, the French ultimately lost ground to the British and their colony was reduced to Pondicherry and a few smaller enclaves. So, there were a series of fights between the British and the French in India from 1746 to 1763. At first, the French led by Dupleix had some big wins like capturing Madras, now called Chennai, in 1746. But over time, the British became stronger and started winning more battles. The French lost most of their power in India. Their colony shrank to just Pondicherry and a few small areas. Like the Dutch, and unlike the Portuguese, the French colonial powers did not much intervene in Indian social and religious life. A rare exception was the destruction in 1748 of Pondicherry's large Vedapurishwaran temple ordered by Dupleix on the persistent request of Pondicherry's Jesuit priest and Dupleix's own wife with a view to asserting the dominance of Christianity. Generally, however, the French had to be content with a modest amount of trade with India. So, unlike the Portuguese, the French did not interfere much in Indian social and religious life. They mostly focused on trade and political power. In 1748, the French led by Dupleix destroyed a big Hindu temple called Vedapurishwaran Temple in Pondicherry. This was because Jesuit priests, that is Christian missionaries, and Dupleix's wife wanted to show that Christianity was more powerful. The French mostly left Indian culture and religion alone. They were mostly interested in doing business, that is trade with India. But their trade was not very large compared to others. Figure 4.6, a 1764 plan of Pondicherry showing the city enclosed in fortifications and grid planning. The large structure facing the sea at the bottom was the fort. The top of the plan points to the west. So this is a map of Pondicherry city from the year 1764. The city is surrounded by strong walls and fortifications. The city is built with streets arranged in a grid pattern, that is, straight roads crossing each other like a chessboard. The large structure facing the sea at the bottom is the fort, where soldiers stayed and defended the city. The top of the map points to the west, so the sea is at the bottom facing east. Pondicherry was the main French colony in India. The fort and walls show how important it was to protect the city from attacks by other European powers or local rulers. So with this, we have completed the part 1 of the chapter, the colonial era in India. I hope you found it easy to understand. If you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching. We will see you again in our next video. Bye bye.